Welcome to Smart Women Talk. This is your host, Katana Abbott. I'm a midlife millionaire coach and a certified financial planner, and I search the world for smart women and a few good men, including best-selling authors and thought leaders who are on that leading edge. So join us for conversations on money, business, health, and inspiration, so you can live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity. Welcome to Smart Women Talk. This is your host, Katana Abbott, and today we are speaking with anti-aging and peak performance pioneering researcher, Professor Ronnie Newman, about the best scientifically validated tools, techniques, and strategies from both ancient cultures around the world and modern medical science for slowing and, yes, even reversing age-related decline in health and vitality. We're going to share with you the 6 pillars that promote lifelong health and vitality of mind, body, and spirit, what ages our brains and bodies, and cutting-edge science that shows it is possible to reverse aging. So let me tell you a little bit about Ronnie. Professor Ronnie Newman is an award-winning, Harvard-trained researcher and published author in mind-body medicine and peak performance. Her team's pioneering research in the 70s shattered the existing paradigm of inevitable mental decline with aging, demonstrating that lifestyle choices like meditation could reverse mental decline and increase the length and quality of life. Ronnie has spoken at the UN, World Bank, Visa, Facebook, and appeared on NBC, PBS, and CNN International. She's Director of Research and Health Promotion for the Art of Living Foundation, faculty at Nova Southeastern University's Lifelong Learning Institute, and honorary faculty at Sri Sri University in India. Welcome to Smart Women Talk, Ronnie. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, my dear friend. It's so wonderful to be here. And thank you for allowing me to share my passion.
Absolutely. You know, I was so excited right after I had foot surgery a year ago. Yeah, it's been a full year. I was lucky enough to take your Ageless Living. I think that's what it was called. I took a course with you and Deborah Poneman,
Yes.
And it was a whole weekend. And it was perfect because I was stuck. I couldn't walk. I was non-weight bearing for 2 months. So it was a great way for me to get to spend the weekend doing something so purposeful. And it really was life-changing. And I understand that's something that you do on an ongoing basis.
Yes.
You found there's a real need for it, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. You know, the only reason that research has any value is because it can improve the quality of people's life and the planet. Mm-hmm. And otherwise, you know, there's no purpose in doing what I do.
Right, right. Yes, it's lovely when we have people that are research-based here. I love that. So before we start, I really want to know a little bit about your backstory. Women always love to hear, like, you know, how did you get involved in this whole anti-aging industry? And because you're a professor, how did this happen?
Well, you know, we all, I believe, come into this world with potential for what we can dedicate our lives to. What is our life purpose? People call it dharma in some traditions. And I always was very interested and very committed to making the world a better place. And when I went to college, I took all of the courses that sounded collegey and grown up. Anything that ended in ology, I took, not even knowing really what it was. So I took sociology and psychology and anthropology, you know, all the ologies. And in my intro psychology course, they talked about human potential, and that even just mental potential, that humankind only uses its estimated 5 to 7% of our mental potential. And I thought, why is that? And there has to be some way to unfold it. And then I started reading the work of Abraham Maslow when he talked about self-actualization and unfoldment of full potential. And it just struck a chord in me. Like, yes, this is what I want to dedicate my life to, is to finding out how to unfold potential and sharing it with people. And then when I was in graduate school at Harvard, the opportunity came up to work with elderly people who were already in nursing homes, and the average age of our study was 83. And I was really committed. It broke my heart when I saw the quality of life of these people. And I really had no plans to be working on aging. I went into, my whole doctoral application was about unfolding full potential as youth develop and starting young so the entire lifespan becomes more of a celebration. But I got pulled into the study. Sometimes you get pulled into things not out of your own volition, but you have to do it for credit and I realized that it was the universe moving me. I mean, that's my personal take. You don't have to go on. But for whatever reason, I ended up on this research on aging, and the study was actually intended, for relieving stress and creating a little bit more joy and peace in these individuals. But what we saw was mind-boggling. We saw there used to be, when I was in graduate school, and we're talking the late 70s, there was this expression, and this is not me, this was, the scientific explanation was called the terminal plunge, that we used to believe that our mental capacity increased, until about our 20s, and then it leveled off, and there really pretty much it was like our brains were set in stone, and there wasn't really anything more we could do. And then about 18 months before death, you dramatically went into what was called the terminal plunge, where, cognitive function would decline. People would have quite a lot of senior moments. There'd be the confusion, there'd be the lack of energy, all of these things. And what we found in the study was that we were actually able to reverse that in people who are already so debilitated that they had been put in nursing homes. And we found that simply by meditating, there was more joy, there was more happiness, their cognitive function actually, and that was the study that shattered the paradigm, that we showed that even if you're already almost bedridden in a nursing home, when you do these practices, you can gain back what you have lost due to time.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
And so like the light bulb went off, and we did a 15-year follow-up on these individuals. And we found they lived significantly longer. They had a higher quality of life, and things that were not directly related to it, which we'll get into more later, the whole psychoneuroimmunology and epigenetics and all of that, is that we found that they had 59% less cardiovascular disease, 37% less cancer. I mean, it was amazing. It was amazing. And I realized that the other thing is that we know from modern science that the human brain, this from the Ageless course, we talk about how the human brain continues to develop well past when we can vote or join the army. And which is very interesting, that the brain continues to develop until about 26 or 27. And then it dramatically begins to actually atrophy. It peaks, and then like a roller coaster, it starts to atrophy, to like shrink. And so it starts shrinking around age 27, 28. And by the time we reach 40, the human brain atrophies at 5% per decade. Now, that's based on the current Western lifestyle. Although while it's common, we also know it's not biologically inevitable. So it brought me back full circle to what I originally wanted to do, which is promoting a life of celebration and purpose and full potential as young as possible. And so that's why, for people who are in their 20s and 30s, this is so very important. So very, very important. And so that's why I do it.
So you were really lucky, Ronnie, to identify your passion at such a young age. That's a really great story. A lot of people, they find their passion much later in life. So
okay.
What is Huh?
That's okay.
Yeah.
Everybody has their own journey. And it's perfect for them.
Right. But it's just pretty neat that you did that in school.
Yeah.
So what is the first thing that you would like our listeners to know when it comes to aging?
It's what I touched on a minute ago, and that is that modern medical science is rediscovering and validating ancient wellness tools from cultures around the world. And when we marry that with the cutting edge medical science from the West, and we take the best of the East and the best of the West, we now know that it is absolutely possible to slow, stall, and even reverse age-related degeneration in the brain and the body. And with that comes naturally the spirit, because it's interesting, but science, without realizing it, has become the cheerleader for spiritual practices, because without focusing, the only way to improve the mind and the body, the brain and the body, is by engaging in practices that are also considered spiritual. And so it's like a table with multiple legs. As one goes, the whole rest goes. And so by simply promoting techniques like meditation, things like exercise, understanding epigenetics, we actually are encouraging people to step on to looking within and engaging in spiritual practices. And the thing is that people don't have to consider them spiritual practices. If people are atheist or agnostic, it's fine. It doesn't matter, because the science shows that these things will give you the quality of life that you're looking for. And at the same time, if it gives you a greater glimpse into the truth of yourself and the universe, well, it's a cherry on top, but it's not necessary to be looking for that. It'll come anyway.
Boy, I just wish I could have been part of the team that got to see how these elders how they related to the meditation, and then to be able to come back. You said you came back years later. Was it the same people or just the same group?
We looked at the same people 15 years later.
Wow.
And some of them obviously had passed away, because they would have been 97. Some of them, a number of them were alive. And we looked at the longevity, based on the state records. But I will tell you, because the universe moves you where you need to be. Some of the research that I've done on, and it's always research on practices, self-empowering practices that are lifestyle changes. And I co-authored a study, and we're doing another study now with the Department of Psychiatry at Western University in Canada. And we were looking at late life depression. And we'll get a little bit later, we'll talk about why it's important to heal depression in order for longevity. It's obvious for quality of life, but for longevity, it's also very, very important. And we looked at late life depression because it's one of the hardest forms of depression to treat, and people tend to not respond. And what we did is we randomized, which is the gold standard in research, we randomized the people to treatment. And these were people who, after 3 months of drugs and psychotherapy, still were depressed, which is very common because the efficacy of the gold standard is very low, especially in late life depression. So this was a group of people, late life depression, drugs and psychotherapy, they're still depressed. And we randomized them to continue treatment as usual, or to continue treatment as usual and just add a particular meditation, because certain meditations are more effective than others, and different and I shouldn't even say more effective. They will get you there faster. And also, not all meditations have the same goal. Meditations vary dramatically by their goal. So anyway, we taught them this Sahaj Samadhi meditation, which is taught by the Art of Living Foundation. It's an ancient practice. And what we found was that this was the data we presented at the World Psychiatry Congress in Berlin, that the success rate for treatment as usual for half a year later, 9%. The success rate when we added the meditation, 54%.
Oh my goodness. That's mind blowing.
And, so when I work with these people and I teach them, it's amazing because, the bottom line is just last week, one of the things that it's actually my main focus at the university in the health professions division is that they, in addition to teaching on campus, they send me out into the community to places where seniors are mature, I guess is the more correct word. And so these people are mostly in their 80s. Some of them look like they're in their 90s. Some may be in their 70s. And for example, just last week, I did a program on, they're obviously very interested in brain health. So I did a 2-session program on brain health. And the session was scheduled to last an hour, but when my schedule permits, I always stay behind in case people want to ask more questions. Everybody stayed. I was there for 2 hours.
Wow.
And then if I didn't have to leave for something else, there were still more questions. So they, because there's something in us that's ageless. Mm-hmm. That never ages. I was just thinking the other day of when I turned 10 years old, and it really caused me to pause. And I remember it was a Friday night, and I was sitting at the dinner table, and I thought, wow, I'm a decade old already. How time passes, because a decade sounded so old.
Right.
But that part of me that was feeling, oh, time is passing, I'm a decade old. That part of me is still identical. That part of us never ages. So whether you're 90 or 19, it doesn't matter, really.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that because one of my best friends, her name was Beth Rice, and she lived to be almost 100. And when she was in her 80s, we used to drive downtown. We had box seats together for the Detroit Symphony Orchestra. And I got her whole story. And I said to her, I said, Beth, I said, it's like you and I are best friends. I said, how old do you feel? Because I noticed this about my grandmother too, because she said, my body, I want to get up and dance, but my body won't let me. And Beth said, I feel like I'm 40, but she was 80. So I know we have our chronological age, but there has to be something more to this. Can you talk to that? Because I think you were just about,
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have 2 different ages, according to science. We have our chronologic age, like Beth was 80.
Yes.
That's how many birthday candles were on her cake. However, that is your chronologic age. That's what's on your birth certificate. The second age that we know we have is called the biologic age. And that's how much wear and tear the body has experienced, how youthful we are, how much spring is on our step, how strong our immune system is, how good our vision is, what is our blood pressure. There are all of these various components that make up one's biologic age. And the 2 they're often the same, but there's no need for that. In fact, there was this great study in the International Journal of Neuroscience, which looked at meditators. And what they found was that their biologic age, or how much wear and tear on the body, was years younger than their chronologic age, or how many candles were on the birthday cake. And the more years they had been meditating, the bigger the difference between the biologic and chronologic age. So absolutely, you're totally right on.
Well, she said to me that every morning she walked down to her basement and got on her treadmill for 45 minutes. And she said, that's when I give thanks. I mean, she was just so optimistic. It was amazing.
Yeah. And, that's the other thing about exercise is that it actually does produce the endorphins that make us feel good and that are anti-aging.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. So you said there's something happening in the body that allows us to create a younger biological age that's defying that. Is it something that's cellular, or is it in our head? I mean, what is happening in the body that does that?
Well, this is great. There is an interaction between the body, the brain, the mood, and the environment. And that determines, to a very large extent, what our biologic age is. And we can think of it in terms of, one of the ways that it's explained in the West is in terms of what I consider one of the most exciting fields, which is the field of epigenetics. And epigenetics is an explanation of how our genetic code can actually be woken up or put to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And a process that's called gene expression. Now, we used to think that just like the screen that people are watching now, or that I'm looking at your gorgeous face on right now, we used to think that our genetic code was pretty much solid like that, and there was nothing we could do about it. But we now know that that's not the case at all, that our genes are continually waking up and exerting their expression, or going to sleep and closing their expression in a process called epigenetics. And you can consider it like a light switch. And what turns that light switch off and on are things within our control. The food we eat, the air we breathe, and the toxins that are in the air we breathe, our sleep patterns, and even our emotions. And some genes are very valuable to turn on. They code for longevity, literally, or for prolonging the life of our white blood cells, which are our immune cells, which is really valuable during this time. We want them to be firing at full force. Other genes code for things like cancer. So, people say, oh, well, there's a genetic predisposition in my family for cancer. Like my family, the BRCA gene for breast cancer is in my family. My grandmother died of breast cancer. My aunt died of breast cancer. My first cousin had it. She's doing a lot of these practices. And so it was caught. She started them later in life. I have been doing these practices since I'm 19, and I've been free. I've been freed. So we now know that our genetic code is a predisposition, but not a determining factor. So just because your mother or your grandmother had it, and your great-grandmother had it, and your great-great-grandmother had it, doesn't mean you have to.
So how widely accepted is this, though, in the traditional medical field?
Oh, it's very, well, the statistic is that it takes between 17 and 37 years for what is established as best practices to become standard of care. That's a long time. Yeah, now, epigenetics has been on the radar for about 20 years. So it's pretty well accepted. Many people don't understand, other than like chemicals, like the toxins in the environment, or stress. A lot of doctors don't spend much time on it, but it is an irrefutable fact in medical science that epigenetics is a reality. And in fact, some of the most modern, the individualized medicine that is starting to gain popularity right now is based in epigenetics.
So what are some of the things that we can do to take charge of that and change our genes?
Okay, well, this is great. And this ties exactly into what we were talking about. What can we do?
Yes.
To take advantage of actually having the destiny of our brain and our body and our life in our own hands. Mm-hmm. And there are 6 pillars, I would say actually 7, but there are 6 recognized pillars. And I don't think any scientist would argue with me that a 7th one, which is environmental toxins and the toxins in the products of our home and EMF and 5G, all of that, should be in a seventh category. But the things that are directly in our control are what irrefutably there is nothing more important than getting stress levels under check. There are 2,500 genes that code for stress, that when we're stressed, it affects those genes. It affects our aging as well, which I'm happy to talk about in a minute. It's really important for people to understand how important that is. So it's stress, getting stress levels in check. It's a healthy diet. It's quality sleep. It's So we can start again with, we go one by one through the pillars, get our stress levels in check, watch our diet, healthy diet, exercise, sleep, social connection, and challenging the mind, challenging the brain, doing something new. Because we now know that unlike what was thought in the past, that, there was nothing we could do about our brain development, we now know that we can the brain creates new brain cells and new interconnections until the day we die. And you can literally, we might as well talk about this for a minute, we can grow a bigger brain until the day we die. So even though it's really, we can't defy nature, and the body does age. And the brain does deteriorate with aging, just like the muscle mass in our legs deteriorates by 40% by the time we're 50, unless we do something about it. However, we do know that we can actually grow a bigger brain at any age, and that those areas of the brain, especially the prefrontal cortex, which is right here behind our forehead, which is the most sophisticated part of the most evolved part of the human brain and is responsible for executive function and planning and concentration and creativity and all of these things that make life so worth living, as well as the hippocampus, which is the primary memory and learning center. These are most sensitive to the deterioration with age. And these are the areas that begin to grow again with practices like meditation. So and what that means is that even though the brain will continue to deteriorate somewhat with age, it will be so slight that it will not impact the quality of our life easily into our 90s and beyond.
And you see people like, I saw a documentary about these men that were from Germany that had come to the United States, and they joined the military as spies to pretend they're German, right? And they were survivors then. And a lot of their family were survivors of the Holocaust. They really had a mission to go there and help win this war. And so they were interviewing these survivors who were all like, 97. A lot of them were professors, and they were still, vibrant and studying, and they were so engaged on this documentary. It was just so interesting to see them, but in their suits, dressed and going to work. Probably, and maybe not going to the university anymore where they did their work later. But tell us about that. What's the effect of the brain when you're engaged and excited and you stay involved late into your life? Because that's what I think the biggest problem with retiring is. I help women at 60 to 90, in their third act, create a passion project, and do their financial plan and make sure everything's fine. But to have a, passion project. And it's so exciting to see what's happening rather than, just retire. I mean, what a terrible word.
Well, you can't retire from life. You can't, there's a difference between retiring from your job and retiring from life.
Right.
And so if we talk about the human brain, what happens is when we learn something new or when we are trying to figure something out, what happens is there's a process called neurogenesis. And genesis means creation, and neuro is nerve. Well, brain cell is a neuron. And so we know that when we learn something new, or we do something new, or we're engaged in figuring something out, that we literally create new brain cells. And when we create the new brain cells, the other thing is that what we also want to do later in life is we want to be able to continue to draw on our life's experiences and what we've already learned. And in order for us to be able to do that, we need to have the neurons, the brain cells, actually interconnecting. And that happens through a process called neuroplasticity, where we lay down new patterns of thinking and the brain cells connect in new ways. And what that does is it creates a bigger mass in the brain. And we think better, we're more creative. And all of the functions of our entire nervous system, all of them are connected to our brain. And so everything works better because the other part of it is that when you're in your passion, when you find what your passion is, then you're taking advantage of psychoneuroimmunology, which I know is a mouthful. We can call it PNI for short. And basically what psychoneuroimmunology tells us is that our emotions are not just in our head. They're everywhere in our body, and they are transmitted there almost immediately by chemical messengers called neuropeptides. And the positive emotions, enthusiasm, optimism, joy, love, all of those, quote, desirable emotions, cause the release of chemical messengers which boost immune system function, brain function, hormone function, autonomic nervous system function. The entire system is wired together. And so when we have positive emotions, it strengthens that entire complex. It strengthens it, it fortifies it. So in terms of immunity, you were asking about earlier, it results in more resistance to disease, everything from viruses to bacteria to tumor cell lines to the common cold. It improves that. It improves our hormone function. It improves our brain function, and it fortifies the entire system, making us stronger and longer at life. In contrast, negative emotions like isolation, sorrow, anger, resentment, worry, all of those things cause the release of chemical messengers which suppress immune system function, which dysregulate the hormone system, which actually destroy the autonomic nervous system. It actually tears down the brain, resulting in less resistance to disease, poor overall health, poor quality of life, and a shorter length of life. So when you find your passion, and even if it's not, well, what am I here on earth to do? If you can't answer that question, it's okay. Do something that brings pleasure and that makes you feel like you are making a difference in the world. You know, as a species, we are wired for altruistic behavior. It actually stimulates the same pleasure center in the brain that's affected by cocaine. So, and it's very enriching to the entire system. So, you know, whether it's rocking, children in the, premature babies in the ICU, or joining pet rescue, or cleaning the beach, or anything, just find something that speaks to you. Bringing flowers to people in nursing homes on Mother's Day. It doesn't matter. Cleaning up your neighborhood, whatever it is, find something, join organizations that are looking to end world peace, to find an end to violence and structure world peace, serve underserved communities, do women's empowerment, whatever it is, just do something that makes you feel,
that's wonderful.
My time is well spent.
Yeah, that's absolutely wonderful to hear that. And I know with COVID, there's been so much isolation. So the fact that things are clearing up, today they announced they're, taking away a lot of the mandates and everything, and we'll be able to get out and be with people and get more involved, because it's been difficult. We've had to connect, we're doing a show right now, but we've had to connect virtually with so many people.
Yeah.
So, and, we haven't been able to travel and go be in museums and go eat the wonderful food out in Portugal or Spain.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been hard not to have that joy and connection.
Right. Because, absolutely. And part of the reason, they know that isolation is as health damaging as smoking 15 cigarettes a day or being obese.
Wow.
And so even during times like COVID, if you can't connect in person, even connecting, doing a Zoom with your family for somebody's birthday, or just, I have friends and we do a Zoom dinner once a month. We used to go out. I have 2 girlfriends and we used to meet once a month for dinner. So we do it on Zoom now. And I look forward to doing it in person, but it's still, it's second best. You do what you can. Yeah.
Well, what are some specific tips that we can use right now to reduce stress? I know we did one of them before the show to connect.
Yeah,
which I love. And I was
see.
actually doing it. I was so wound up today, even before I saw you, I was doing that. I love that. So
Oh,
can you share
wonderful.
some of your tips with us that people, because I love giving people tips they can implement immediately.
Yeah, everybody can do this starting today. One of the most important things for both anti-aging and for the opposite of anti-aging, which is thriving and flourishing, is getting our stress levels in check.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just because it feels really horrible to be stressed, but it literally ages the body and the brain. Under stress, stress causes inflammation in the brain and the body. Now, in the brain, stress is particularly damaging because what it does, what the inflammation means, is that brain cells are being damaged and dying. So your brain is aging faster than is necessary. The other thing, just to give you an idea of how damaging it is, that, well, just one quick thing, because I'm keeping my eye on the clock, and we could speak for 3 years on all of
Right,
this.
yeah.
But one of the other things that happens when people feel stressed is that it kicks in the fight or flight response, which is a survival mechanism. And so what it does is it diverts the glucose, which is the fuel of the brain and the body. It diverts the glucose from the brain to our exercising muscles to allow us to fight or flee. And the brain requires 20% of all of the energy of the entire body. And it is really critical to optimal brain functioning that it has enough glucose to be firing on all cylinders. But when we feel stressed, the glucose is diverted from the brain to our exercising muscles. And therefore, it creates an energy shortage in the brain, and the brain functions suboptimally. And the brain is intended to only do those functions which are necessary for survival at that point, and none of the higher order functioning of executive planning and creativity and all of that, in addition to which it kills brain cells.
Yeah.
So, and science also says that inflammation is at the root cause of all disease.
Yeah. And right now, and I mentioned to you that we used to have 1 in 10,000 people with autoimmune disease, which is caused from inflammation. And now it's 1 in 4.
Correct.
And people don't even know. A lot of times they'll have it for many, many years. And then all of a sudden they'll get a diagnosis, but they've had it.
Right. Right. And this is, you bring up a really important point too, Kat, and that is that even with the brain functioning and with heart functioning, that we don't notice it until the damage is already done. Mm-hmm. Like brain deterioration, by the time a person starts noticing they're having trouble remembering names, the brain deterioration, the brain degeneration, the death of brain cells has already occurred. It's already occurred. And this is why I highly recommend that people be proactive. Yeah. From a young age. And, so what age is the perfect age to start? The age you are today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to ask you that we really need to start, even with bone loss, osteopenia. It starts when you're young, right. By being active and, taking exercise, all these the 6 pillars, by starting those when you're young, there's way less chance you're going to have osteoporosis when you get older.
Right. And my mom had it, she lost about 3 inches. Mm-hmm. And when I was 40, I'll be 70 this year. No Botox. This is me.
Isn't that amazing? I love that.
And I had osteopenia at 40, and at 70, I don't. So it's totally possible through diet and lifestyle, and of course, getting stress levels in check. So in terms of tools that people can take away today, how about I teach them the straw breath?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. And I'll give
let's do that. And then I want to make sure they know about how to learn about the course. Okay. Wonderful. So we can wrap. Yes.
Perfect. Okay, great. So this particular breath, I'll tell you a little story about this breath. The foundation that I work for, the Art of Living Foundation, we teach all kinds of programs, and we work with inner city gangs and homeless youth. And we teach them this particular breath that helps them to what they call chillax, to chill and relax and calm down the stress response in very heated situations. It quiets the entire nervous system. So when my mother was 93 and still living alone, she went running to get the phone and fell flat back on the tile, had a huge hematoma on the side of her head, was bloody, and she called me. Thank God she didn't lose consciousness. She called me. I picked her up. I raced her to the hospital. You know, they did all the tests, and thank God they discovered there was no permanent damage. She's just going to be a lot black and blue for a while. But the nurse came in, and you know, she was hooked up to the EKG machine and the blood pressure and the respiration rate, and her blood pressure was 199 over 100. Because when you have a trauma, when the body sustains a trauma, the fight or flight response kicks in and stays active for hours. And for other reasons, they couldn't give my mother anything more than she had already taken to bring down her blood pressure. And so the nurse came in and said, you know, sweetheart, you're fine. You only, you know, but you need to relax because we have to get your blood pressure down. At that, she was in danger of having a stroke and dying from the high blood pressure. So, and then the nurse went out, and then the doctor came in, and because nothing was changing, and he took her hand. He was a very sweet man, and he kissed her on the forehead, and he said, "You're really fine, dear. I'm here to reassure you that other than being a little bit bruised, you're going to be totally fine, but you need to relax because your blood pressure is dangerously high." Well, he might as well have taken fairy dust out of his pocket and sprinkled it on her. You know, I mean, how much can you talk somebody into relaxing? And I realized that my mom's life was literally on the line and I had to do something. So I said, Mom, we're going to do the straw breath. And so I taught her the straw breath. And I said, we'll do it together. We did it together. And in 2 minutes, her blood pressure came down 30 points. And the nice thing about it, yeah. So the nice thing about it is you can do it anywhere, anytime, and nobody notices. So what we do is we're going to take a breath in through our nose, and then we're going to purse our lips like we're holding a straw and allow the exhale to just comfortably come out through the straw. So it's in through the nose, purse the lips, and let the breath normally go out through the straw. And if you're in a place where you can close your eyes, it's nice to close your eyes and do it with the eyes closed. In through the nose and out through the straw. And we'll take a few of these together at your own rhythm. In through the nose and gently out through the straw, no forcing. And after you finish your last exhale, relax the lips. Allow the breath to return to normal. And when you feel ready, you may open the eyes.
Wonderful. So I hear your mother's a big advocate of this now, and she teaches others.
Yeah. What happened is after that, she agreed to move to an independent living facility, and she fell again. But this time she was sitting in a comfortable chair in a carpeted room and just lost her balance when she was getting up and fell to the floor. But again, they put her in the wheelchair and they, raced her to the nursing station and they checked her vitals and she was fine, except she had that spike in her blood pressure again, because she had fairly high blood pressure. It was an issue for her because of some heart condition she had. So the nurse said to her, "You have to relax." And so my mother said to the nurse, "Have you ever heard of the straw breath?" And the nurse said, "No." My mother said, "Well, I'm going to show you so that you can teach other residents if they need it." My mother did it. And again, her blood pressure dropped this time, 20 points. And the head nurse called me and said, "What did you teach your mother?" And she said, is it really safe for people? Can I teach this to everybody? Yeah. And so of course I said, "Yeah, go for it."
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I know people would love to know how they can connect with you. And so tell us a little bit about what you have coming up and how people can connect.
Oh, absolutely. So our dear friend, Deborah Poneman, who's an expert in success. She teaches the Yes to Success seminar, and she's a transformational leadership coach. And I teach a webinar called Ageless, Your Brain, Your Body, Your Future, where we go into depth into each of the 6 pillars and how it affects the brain, how it affects the body, how it affects our mood, how it affects, and we talk a lot about, there's a new concept in the medical community now called healthgevity. We know about longevity, like how many years you live, but you don't always live all of those years healthy, like people who are, in nursing homes or people, God forbid, in comas. They may have, longevity, but that's not healthgevity. Healthgevity is how long you're on top of your game when your biological age is years behind your chronological age. And so we teach the tools that are evidence-based for accomplishing that and achieving that and living your best life and creating a life that's worth celebrating for all your days on earth. And we go into the 6 pillars that we talked about earlier, as well as the 7th pillar. And we also, we have a Facebook community. We talked about isolation and connection. We have this wonderful Facebook community where the people who've gone through the program, they go on and they cheer each other on. And they post questions, and Deborah and I alternate going on every single day and answering questions. And then we do a follow-up 1 month later to see what's worked and, where people need coaching. And it really becomes a lifelong friendship, as well as tools to make life a celebration. And we'll be teaching the next one sometime in June.
Oh, good.
Yeah, sometime in June. And if people want to know about it, I have a free gift for everybody. There's an ebook that Deborah and I have written. The title is something to the effect of Ancient and Modern Tips and Tools for Lifelong Radiance in Body, Mind, and Spirit. And so that is available as our gift to you. And if you sign up to get the ebook, which will be emailed to you, the link to download that, then you'll also have the opportunity. Deborah and I do a masterclass, which we'll also be doing in the spring, a free masterclass, where we go into some more depth than we had time today into each of the 6 pillars. But again, that's only, that's a 90-minute webinar. And then there's time for question and answer at the end. And then people will also learn about our actual webinar, which is 11 hours over a weekend. And then, with the follow-up session and all the bonus sessions. And so they can learn all about it. But one step at a time, let them, get the book, read the book, start implementing it right away. And you can come to our masterclass, which is our gift to the world. It's our gift to the community to really let people understand more fully about how important each of these are for our health and our longevity, because they're all connected.
Yeah, and I have the website. It's www, but it's yes2success.com/ageless book.
Yes.
So that's pretty easy. Just go to yes2success.com/ageless book.
Yes.
And for those that are on our mailing list, we've made this available too. So
great.
Yes, absolutely. So Ronnie, and I've been to the course, and it's really fun the way you put it together over a weekend with the breaks and everything. So it was really fun and very, very helpful. So thank you so much for being here today. It's been such a pleasure.
My pleasure. It's always so lovely to connect with you. You know, one of the things that we teach the young people in our foundation, in the programs we do, is to make a new friend every day.
Yeah.
And and it increases dopamine, which suppresses cortisol, which is a stress hormone, which actually promotes longevity. It also makes life a whole lot more fun, and it's the basis of world peace. Because when you know people and you don't consider them other, then you can't fight with your friends.
And does it produce oxytocin?
Yeah.
Does it?
Pardon?
Do you get oxytocin from being with friends?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And oxytocin is wonderful because not only is it good for you and it promotes longevity and health of the body, it's one of those chemicals that's released that boosts immune system function, endocrine function, but it also makes us better world citizens. It's discovered people are more altruistic and more generous when they have more oxytocin.
Wonderful.
So it's good for you. What feels good is good, which is what my grandmother used to say. What feels good is good for you and also for the world.
Oh, beautiful.
So you're my new friend for the day.
Oh, thank you so much, Ronnie. It's been so wonderful having you.
My pleasure. I look forward to connecting with you again. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today and for sharing your most precious gift, which is your time and your attention.
Right. Wonderful. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And if you would like to get to know our guests more by getting on our mailing list and joining our free Smart Women community, you go to joinsmartwomen.com. You'll get our monthly theme-based e-zine. It shows our guests. They put articles and free gifts in it. And now you can actually watch the program, watch the shows on smartwomentv.com or go to anywhere you get your podcast and you can access it there. So until the next time we meet, go out and live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity. Smart Women Talk is brought to you by Smart Women's Empowerment, a 501c3 nonprofit project of United Charitable. Music by Bill Lucas from his album When It Rains. Available on Apple Music and Spotify. Catch us wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, and be sure to join our free community at joinsmartwomen.com to access all our free Smart Women resources.